Hey folks, it's John with KGTropicals.com, bringing you another episode of my Comment of the Week series where I comb through all of my social media accounts and select a comment that I think is worthy of addressing in video. So let's get right to it. First comment comes from a video I did a while back during my 240-gallon overhaul project for the African cichlid mix from Carib Sea. Comment reads like this: "You just don't know much about aquariums." Okay, today's real comments come from my video I did about euthanizing fish. There's two comments, both on the same topic. First one is from Jonathan Wardrop. He says, "Hey John, I was wondering if you could talk about the processes that Lisa went through to nurse the Oscar and the peacock." And Luis Vasquez says, "We need a video on how to save fish." So this is a question that I get a lot because I've talked about that Oscar and I've talked about that dragon blood that Lisa brought back from the depths to save their lives. And a lot of people have asked what she did for that. So I'm going to try to kind of sum it up for you, what she did. And I think you'll be surprised because there's not a whole lot to it. So anybody who knows me knows that I always like to use the human analogy when it comes to anything that has to do with animals or injuries or sicknesses or anything like that. And with this one, it's going to be no different. Let's think about what would happen if you got a large cut on your arm. That cut would heal itself. Your body will actually heal that on its own without doing anything to it, right? We all know that that will happen, but we do things to ensure that it happens properly and that it happens without any kind of complications. Let me tell you a little story about something that happened last night. So while I'm recording this, the night before, we actually had to take our youngest daughter to the emergency room. She fell and cut her knee. I'm not making up a story. This is absolutely true. Huge gash on her knee, about 3 inches long. So when you go into the hospital, when this happens to you and you go to the ER, what happens? The doctor cleans the wound to make sure that there's nothing in there that could potentially affect the healing of that wound. And then if it's bad enough, the doctor will stitch that up to make sure that it heals properly and straight and doesn't leave a huge scar. And then your job as the parent or the person taking care of that wound has to ensure that nothing happens to that wound while it's in the healing process that could cause it to get infected. So when it comes to an injury on a fish, I'm not talking about diseases. I'm not talking about something catastrophic. I'm talking about injuries due to fighting or scraping up against a rock or something like that. We need to look at it the same way and take the same approach. Now, obviously, we can't put stitches on the fish. Who would do that if we could? I don't. But we can't do that. But what we can do is make sure that the fish has a good environment so that it can heal on its own. And we also want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to potentially infect those wounds. So let me tell you exactly what Lisa did. Now, what she did for both of these fish, this is very complicated, folks, so you're going to want to write this down. She stuck those fish in a tank by themselves, and she did frequent water changes, and she made sure to put the neosporin of the fish-keeping world, Melifix, in the tank. That's what she did. That's all it needed. Okay, so let's go in a little bit more depth with it. Obviously, it's a little bit more than that. We have to talk about why she was doing those things. Stress is a huge fish killer. So taking that fish, those fish that we're talking about, out of their tanks where they got beat up, putting them into their own tank, isolating them from everyone else, helps to alleviate stress on that fish so that they can heal better. It also takes away the potential that the fish could continue beating on them because, let's face it, fish are relentless. They will not give up. They will just keep pounding on that fish until it eventually dies. So putting them in isolation is something that will help them out tremendously because it will take away that threat and also lessen the stress. The next thing was she put Melifix in the tank. I'm not doing a commercial for API, but I do believe that this is a product that every fish keeper should have. I really do look at it as the neosporin for the fish keeping world. It's something that's going to help to facilitate the healing of wounds on your fish. So putting Melifix in there was one of the critical things that she did. And we kept the water clean. Why? Because we want to remove the potential for infection. Because the wound might be healing perfectly, but if it gets infected, you're out. That fish is going to end up dying because probably by the time you're going to see that it's infected, it's going to be too late to treat it with antibiotics. So the process was very simple. Isolating the fish, keeping the water really nice and clean. She was doing like 30% water changes every other day. They were in there by themselves, so it's not like the tank was getting really dirty. And she treated the fish with Melifix. And that's it. And eventually the fish came around and they were both fine. Unfortunately, that dragon blood did fall in my 150-gallon tank when it crashed. But as you see behind me, the Oscar is still alive and well and doing very good. The only thing that he has is a small little notch cut out of his tail that just hasn't grown back, and it probably never will. But that's okay because he's fine, he's happy, and everything's great. So when you're treating injuries on your fish, use common sense. We want to keep the area free from potential infection, and we want to give the fish a stress-free environment so that they can heal. If a fish is stressed out, they're not going to heal properly. So try, if you can, to get that fish isolated, keep the water clean, put something in there to help them heal a little bit faster. If you don't, they still will heal on their own, but might make them feel a little better to have something like Melifix in the tank, and your fish should come around. I'm not telling you that any injury that your fish ever has, this is the solution. It's going to fix every single problem. I'm not telling you that, but you will dramatically increase the chances of your fish's survival and healing properly if you do that. It's really not rocket science. It's pretty simple, and it's why I haven't done a video on it yet, because to me it is so simple. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit about how to treat fish that have been injured. Again, this doesn't really apply to diseases or anything like that. This is really just injuries from, banging their head up against the lid on your tank or getting beat up by another fish. That is where this is going to help you out a whole lot, and I hope that it has. If you want to see the video that this comment came from, these comments came from, you can click right up here, and it'll take you right over to that. And if you haven't watched my video yet on this unbelievable new background that we got in the 125, you can click right here, and it'll show you that up close and personal. And don't forget that you can get 15% off of your own background when you go to Universal Rocks and enter Tank Talk in the promo box at checkout. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to talking to you again next week with a brand new comment.